Okay, today I'm going to show you how to access the Personal Lines Homeowners ACORD application. Start from abraminterstate.com, our main website. From this page, you're going to click on our Forms and Applications. You can do one of two things. Click on the link or scroll down until you see Personal Lines. This is then going to open up a new page for you, which you want to scroll down until you get to Personal Lines ACORD Homeowner Application and click on this link. Here you will see an editable, fillable Homeowners ACORD application. I'm going to walk you through a couple of very important spots on here to make sure that we get the information we need as quick as possible to get you your quote as quick as possible. I'm going to start with applicant's name and mailing address. We do need the full name. If there are two customers, be sure to include both customers' names and mailing address. In addition, agency name. Please always make sure that this information is filled out so we know who to return the quote to. If we do receive an application without agency information, it simply gets logged in our system and will not be reviewed. A phone number, fax number for the retail agent is also requested, or an email address so that we know who to send it back to. Applicant's occupation is not a required form, but it is necessary for certain markets. So if you have it, go ahead and provide that information. If you don't, feel free to bypass that for now. Same with date of birth. It's not required for all programs that we offer. However, it can be helpful in looking at a specific company. When we go down to dwelling coverages, these items are very important to make sure that they are filled out. If we receive an application with blank limits, we do have to return that to you as incomplete. You don't need to worry about filling out the HO form. We will quote it with the best form possible. For dwelling, you want to make sure that you're putting in the replacement cost of the property. Replacement cost should be run through any kind of system in your office that uses the capability to derive replacement cost, not value of the property. It's very important to distinguish between the two to make sure that we don't have any issues upon inspection. Most companies use default limits for other structures, personal property, and loss of use. You don't have to enter limits in here. We will use defaulted limits. However, if you have specific coverages that you want to apply to all of those other structure, personal property, loss of use, make sure to include that so that we know, for instance, if you want a higher limit on personal property, we can process that accordingly. For personal liability, we do need a limit from you. If you don't enter a limit, we're usually going to default for you, but to make sure that we give you the quote that you wanted the first time around, make sure to advise us. Medical payments, they can vary from $1,000 to $5,000. If you don't advise us, we will usually default to $1,000 automatically. However, it's best to give us that information as well, since it is tied in with liability. Deductible, if you want to enter a deductible, please feel free to do so here. Otherwise, we use our defaults from each particular program, which may vary. When we get down to this section here of rating and underwriting, a couple key spots to take note of. We need to know the type of dwelling. Most of these are going to be frame built. However, if you have a manufactured home, for instance, make sure that that is selected, since that can limit some of the products available. We need to know the year built of the property and the square footage. We also need to look at the protection class of the property here. If you don't have the protection class, make sure to let us know the hydrant and fire station. The distance to the hydrant should be in feet and the fire station in miles. We can use this information to help us estimate the protection class, but it is always safest to find the actual protection class, usually from contacting the fire department or using some sort of third-party service if you have that available. Next over here, we look at structure type. Structure type is generally going to be dwelling. There could be a condo or a townhouse situation, so if you mark one of these, make sure that that is in fact correct, because there will be some additional questions that we may be following up with you for. But again, most of these can be defaulted to dwelling. Usage type, primary, secondary, seasonal. We do tend to use secondary and seasonal interchange between each other, so what we're looking for is either one of these to be marked or to state primary. Number of families. If you don't put a number of families here, that's fine. We will use an assumption to guess that it is a single-family property unless we have reason to believe otherwise. However, if you are quoting a multiple unit dwelling, make sure that you let us know how many units this is including here. If you have the date of purchase, that's great. It will come in handy sometimes when we're looking at clue history. However, if you don't have it at the time, that's fine. We can work around that. So depending on how you entered your built is going to determine how thoroughly we need this information answered on renovation type. For instance, if the home was just recently built in 2010, it's not going to be necessary to enter any renovations, typically because they haven't occurred. However, if we are looking at a home built even in 1980, we're going to want to see some renovations here. We don't require full 100% complete renovations, but we just want to know what has been done to the property to maintain it in a safe and sound condition. And so you can see here, you can put the update year and you can check whether it was partial or complete. If you have any additional items to mention regarding these, we'll go over that in our remarks section later. Heating type is also very important. If you don't tell us what type of heating, we're usually defaulting to central gas forced air unit. So that's most commonly what we see. However, if you have a special type of heating system in the home, or if the property only has a wood stove, for instance, it's very important to make sure you let us know that up front here so that we can market it to the correct carrier. Aside from that, we're also looking down here at occupancy. Occupancy, owner, tenant, unoccupied, or vacant. Owner is going to be most commonly selected on a homeowner's application. If you may have a risk that is a combination of owner and tenant, such as a owner-occupied duplex with the other half occupied by a tenant, feel free to select both or let us know in your comments section about the different occupancy type. There is quite a bit of information here. Not all of it is required except for those things that I'm noting right now. One item to point out here is this section here on wiring type. It's going to highlight everything, but it's just this section on circuit breakers, fuses, knob and tube, or aluminum wiring. Depending on the age of the home, we're going to pay very close attention to this section. So if you have a home built recently, it's not necessary to fill out the information on wiring. However, it's always best to do that. If you have an older home, especially those built from the 1900s to the late 50s, early 60s, we're going to want to see that it is on circuit breakers. So it should be answered yes to breakers, no to fuses, no to knob and tube wiring. If you have a situation that has fuses or knob and tube wiring, please be sure to contact our office first. Roof material is very important as well. We need to know composition, tile, slate roof, metal roof. Any of those items can facilitate us, help us market it to the right product. On this next page here, general information, all these are really a bunch of yes or no questions. Please go through them as thoroughly as possible. If there are any questions marked yes, make sure that you enter additional information in your comment section here, which opens up. If there's items that you feel are important to the rating, but not necessarily a yes or no, such as is house for sale? No, it may not be, but are they planning on doing it in the short or immediate future? Maybe you can include those items, that information here. So feel free to take advantage of these comments, the comment fields. I'm going to scroll down to our third page here. Prior care information. The more we know, the better. If you don't have that at hand, that's fine, but we may come back to you and ask for clarification on that or confirmation that it is currently insured. Loss data. There is losses. Please be sure to enter it here in this section with the date, type of loss, meaning fire, water, theft, whatever type it was, and a description of the loss. It's best to not only describe a description of the loss, but also any steps that have been taken to prevent future losses and anything that was done to fix the claim itself. And of course, amount paid out. CAT number is going to refer to whether it was a catastrophic loss. If you don't have that on hand, that's fine. We can obtain it for you. If this space is not enough to provide us with all of the loss details, please drop down here to your remarks section and continue providing loss information. This section is also very valuable to us. We look here to see if there's any additional comments that you are entering about the risk itself. A lot of these that we see have some very particular quirks about them, or they need to be handled in a certain way, and unless we know about that, we may be marketing it to the wrong product. So we want to make sure that we get all of that handled up front. So this is a whole open field to give us as much detail as possible. The application does have a spot for the applicant's signature and the producer's signature. However, for quoting purposes, it is not required. Here on the last page are some additional options for coverages. If you don't indicate anything on here, it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be offered those coverages, but this is a great spot to enter items that you may want, such as you'll see, for instance, replacement cost on the dwelling, replacement cost on the contents. Now, if you don't check these, do we offer this? On average, yes, of course. We try and give you the best quote possible. But if there's items that you want to include on here that are an absolute must-have, that again helps us figure out which product to drive this to. And there may be a case where you're asking for coverages that we cannot offer, and so that will warrant a phone call to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. So again, some additional details there. Now, once you have your application completed as thoroughly as possible, you're going to want to make sure that you save a copy of this. If you have certain versions of Adobe, you should be able to save readily. If you don't, you may need to print a copy to save that to your file. After that, you want to make sure that you have either faxed our application or emailed it. If you fax it, you're going to send it to 916-780-7181. And if you email it, you're going to email to apps, APPS, at abramInterstate.com. Thank you.